And also, we are looking at what is happening with Rwanda and Burundi spat regarding the closure of border, what is happening to the East African community, and also Kenya, which is sort of really having a frosty relationship so far when it comes to matters of maybe policy changes and trade. Looking at what is happening with Uganda, where we have the president trying to also reconcile and have a happy medium with Ugandan government regarding also the exports and the imports, which is solely on the oil. And we shall be looking also what is happening with Kenya and Tanzania. You remember that particular closure of the airspace to Kenya Airways, and that has been so far resolved. But why do we have all this happening right now, especially in the region that we are seeming to be ruffling the feathers of our neighbors the bad way? We will be looking at that this morning. We follow the also U.S. election where former President Donald Trump had a very great victory in Iowa, and what it does really portend for the U.S. election as well. We're joined this morning by Dr. Hassan Kanenje, who is the director of the Horn Institute. Also, we have Dr. Ken Ombongi with us, who is a historian. We have with us as well Professor Peter Kadwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute, and will be joined much later as well by Yusuf Hassan, who is a member of Parliament, Kamukunji, and also a member of the Committee of Foreign Relations and also Diplomacy in the National Assembly. And we shall also be getting a rich stream of information on what the committee has up its collective sleeves as well. But let's see what we have fresh off the press this morning. We begin with a bold paper, and this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard this morning. Just as we've mentioned, Ruto's many battles is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. This is what we have there. No holds barred. President William Ruto has been on a warpath, taking on neighbors, institutions, and anyone whom he does not agree with. He has always made his feelings known, much to the chagrin of his victims or opponents. Experts contend that, as a symbol of national unity and African statesman, he should pursue dialogue. This is what is on the front page of the Standard today. And you can see some of the leaders who have been, or they've felt they've been rubbed the wrong way. This is Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. In April last year, efforts by Ruto to lead the Sudanese peace effort were thwarted after the Sudan Armed Forces under Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, one of the warring factions, questioned his neutrality on the matter. Burhan said Ruto was an old friend of his rival Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, Burhan's former deputy and now leader of a rival rebel group, Rapid Support Forces. Suluhu Hassan, as part of Airlines, has thrown the relationship between Nairobi and Dar es Salaam into disarray. This is months after President Samir Suluhu is said to have been snapped by the government while on a peace mission in the country. Uhuru Kenyatta, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, has borne probably the biggest brunt from the Ruto administration, with the government pushing for a probe of the last 10 years, where they want to form a commission to look at the state capture. This is what is on the front page of the Standard. Let's see. We have more. Felix Tshisekedi, DR's president, has expressed his displeasure with the government after rebels called the press in Nairobi to threaten his government. Also, Yoweri Museveni, the Yoweri Museveni administration filed the case against Kenya on December 28th last year after Kenya declined to issue Ugandan National Oil Corporation with license to operate as a local oil marketer in November. That is the story that you want to follow. Let's just see what we have on top here on the teaser. Shaka Hall account, Mackenzie to face murder charges. This is on page 6 of the Standard today. Union iked by demands on teachers. That is on Enterprise Magazine today. That is on page 4, I should say. Enterprise Magazine comes in handy for you. It's all about company registration and surprises galore in AFCON. That is on page 32 of the Standard this morning. All right, the Daily Nation also seems to be going on the same bent as well. Kenya's troubles with neighbors, regional ties, latest round with Dar es Salaam resolved within 2 days. It's all a matter of diplomacy. President William Ruto's government has been on a coalition course with its East African neighbors. On several occasions since assuming office in August 2022, some of his administration's decisions on trade and politics seem to have rubbed them the wrong way. You have the story on page 6. What's the beef? And also here, it has been listed for you. DR Congo, miffed by the activities of an opposition figure in Nairobi, the Democratic Republic of Congo recalled its ambassador to Kenya. Kenya's Foreign Affairs Ministry strongly disassociated itself from the opposition figure and his links to rebels. We have also Rwanda. In a diplomatic goof, Transport Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen called out the Rwandan leader, President Paul Kagame, describing his leadership as an autocracy. In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni's administration has lodged a case against Kenya at the East African Court of Justice, highlighting the rift between the nations over the denial of a license that will enable Kenya or Uganda to handle fuel imports destined for Kampala. And it goes on. We have Sudan as well. Khartoum recalled also its ambassador to Kenya in protest at the official reception given to Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, the commander of the paramilitary rapid support forces, who has been at war with the regular army led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Also, we have Somalia. The UN's top court has ruled largely in favor of Somalia in its long-running dispute with Kenya over their maritime border. But Kenya has rejected the ruling, accusing the International Court of Justice of bias. Lately, also in Tanzania, Tanzania's Civil Aviation Authority barred Kenya Airways from operating passenger flights between Nairobi and Dar es Salaam with effect from January 22nd, that is 2024. However, the two countries have moved fast to resolve the disputes. All right, still on the front page of the Daily Nation, Ruto Raila clash over judiciary is a call for dialogue. As Azimio leader Raila Odinga has warned Chief Justice Martha Koome against holding talks with President William Ruto over his constant attacks on the courts. Mr. Odinga said yesterday that agreeing to negotiate with President Ruto could compromise the independence of the judiciary. He issued the warning on a day Dr. Ruto said he's ready for the talks to address graft vested interest and the saboteurs of his development agenda. You have a story on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Also, club party before death. 10 people, including owner of a nightclub and a hospital's guards, quizzed over doctor's killing. We have teachers versus students inside LSK battle for male representatives at the JSC. This is on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. All right, let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. How cops nabbed fleeing Hacksaw murder suspect. Movement stressed using footage from CCTV surveillance cameras on buildings on the routes it's thought he took from the scene. And this is about the recent murder of a lady, a 24-year-old student of university student who was found in a hotel there or in an apartment. And right now, the security officers have nabbed someone who is a suspect. You can follow the story inside the Star today, but it raises the questions of the femicide that is rising here in the country. We've had also the Federation of Kenyan Lawyers, the Federation of Women Kenyan Lawyers is actually addressing this issue of femicide here in the country. So what is behind this? Some people are suspecting a ritualistic killing here that is happening because the body was dismembered and decapitated. The head is missing. That's the question that they're asking so far. They heaved and pulled and finally translocated 3 rhinos, and you can see KWS veterinary and capture rangers during the launch of the translocation of 21 black rhinos at Loisaba's Conservancy had at work here. Also, Ruto team and governors clash over 272 billion shillings. A huge row has erupted between the national and county governments over functions worth 272.2 billion shillings earmarked for devolution. The Star has established that the national government, especially ministries, set to lose functions and billions, have bitterly disputed the planned transfers of the roles. Also, from village girl to top educator and investor, Lizzie Wanyoike started life as a naive villager or village girl in rural Muranga and rose to a top educator and entrepreneur in Nairobi. Lizzie Wanyoike passed on last week after a long battle with cancer, and she was, of course, an entrepreneur and principal of Nairobi Business Institute. You can read all about it and her story on page 3 of The Star this morning. Kalonzo sets, or it says Kalonzo sets stage for epic 27 battle with President Ruto. That is a 2027. You can read the story there on page 6 of The Star this morning. Usimkaribie Ruto, Raila aonya Koome dhidi ya kukutana na rais ili kumaliza uhasama uliopo baina ya serikali na mahakama. You can read all about it on page 2 of Taifa Leo this morning. Mackenzie kushtakiwa kwa ugaidi, Mudavadi sasa kipenzi cha rais. This is another story on page 10 of Taifa Leo this morning. Trump ashinda mchujo Iowa, and soko la asili hata majuu la patikana. You can read all about it inside Taifa Leo. We cross over now to Uganda, where we have the list of election officials are being altered. They're saying why list of election officials was altered. There is hostility here. It is understood from sources that the suggestions that Miss Antonu's elevation was backed by some influential figures in government upset some officials in parliament who reportedly indicated their reservations about the appointee to the president. You have the story on page 6 of the Daily Monitor. And non-aligned mission states in deadlock over genocide Israel. This is happening in Uganda. And you can see Minister of State for Industry David Bahati, Vice President Jessica Alupo, and State Minister for Trade Harriet Ntambazi admiring an art piece by Ronald at Kampala Serena Hotel yesterday during the NAM Business Summit. You can follow the story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor. Museveni asks to know how coffee billions were spent. And that story tucked on page 3. And Tanzania clips Kenya's wings in fight over airlines. Kenya has been forced to rescind its earlier decision to refuse Tanzania Civil Aviation Authority's request to operate Fifth Freedom Traffic right to air Tanzania's Company Limited for all cargo service between Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. That is the story you want to follow inside the Daily Monitor there on page 8. And that has since been resolved. We shall be looking at that. And also, we head over to Tanzania. Experts, they say, do this to address joblessness among youth. Experts yesterday highlighted technology and the informal sector as promising avenues in empowering the youth and addressing unemployment. This story continues on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. And why women's empowerment is a passion. Why women's empowerment is a passion. Still on the front page of the Citizen, Tanzania lifts ban on KQ flights after Kenya climbed down. Tanzania lifts ban on KQ flights after Kenya climbed down. This is on page 3. Tanzania starts the year with promising tourism prospects as well. That is on page 3 of the Citizen. Government urges caution amid spread of red eye disease. Government urges caution amid spread of red eye disease. This is the story on page 3 of the Citizen this morning. In Rwanda, government to lift 300,000 families out of poverty in 2 years. Karongi district has 36,000 households in need of assistance to graduate out of poverty. This is on page 3. Kagame Blinken discuss regional security. And this is at the World Economic Forum. We can see President Kagame meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos on Tuesday. According to the President's office, Kagame and Blinken discussed the ongoing cooperation to ensure sustainable peace in the region by addressing the root causes of the conflict. This story, you can follow it inside the New Times as well. And the East African this week is holding this particular splash season of Anumi. And as if you've seen from the Standard, the Daily Nation as well, this is where we are at. Things are falling apart in East African community. Burundi shuts its border with Rwanda in spite of rebel attacks, just as DRC did over M23. Meanwhile, Somalia beats drums of war in Port Royal with Addis as Kenya and Uganda square off at regional courts over oil imports. This is the story that you want to follow on page 5 of the East African this week. And we have the president of Rwanda, Kagame, saying this unfortunate decision will restrict free circulation of people and goods and violate the principles of regional cooperation. Also, Burundi president, this is Evariste Ndayishimiye, saying these armed groups have been provided with shelter, food, offices and money from the country that hosts them, Rwanda. That is the story that you want to follow inside the East African this week. Pain of providing cheap healthcare. East African governments are grappling with great odds to deliver health services for all, and EACOP partners seeks 3 billion shillings. That is, finances continue to shun pipeline projects opposed by climate rights activists. The story continues on page 4 of the East African this week. China Daily, President sets key targets for financial sector. She emphasizes preventing risks, says regulation must have teeth and thorns, and also investing in China an opportunity, Lee says at Davos, and you can see him here together with Klaus Schwab, the chairman of World Economic Forum, during the opening of the 54th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland on Tuesday. The event will run through Friday, and you can read all about it also inside the China Daily this morning. Right, I shall be showing what we have on the editorial cartoons and other international publications much later in the course of the program right now. But let's just hear from our panelists this morning, just to give introductory remarks, to hear what they have to say, especially on the dailies that is marked up on what we want to discuss today, especially the region and Kenya, what is happening with Tanzania, what is happening in Rwanda, what is happening with Uganda. Ruto's many battles is what is on the front page of the Standard. Dr. Hassan Kaneji, good morning.
Good morning to you, Dipa.
Yes.
How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Yes. It's about statecraft, and you expect, of course, when you're president, you're not going to choose the problems to deal with. You have to deal with the problems that are going to be forced on you by circumstances. Some, depending on how you respond to it, of course, determines the success or failure of your approach and your policies in time. Now, Kenya is particularly at a very interesting point, of course, in the region. And there's plenty for the president on his plate, both domestically as well as regionally. And I think the next few months are going to be decisive in which direction Kenya is going to go, both here internally as well as externally.
All right. Okay, let's hear from Professor Peter Kagwenya. Good to see you. Good morning.
Good to see you, Debal.
Yes.
And thanks for this invite to this auspicious forum.
You're welcome.
And greetings, Happy New Year to my colleagues.
Happy New Year.
I think the state of Kenya's foreign policy cannot be said to be good unless you want to cheat or to lie. The truth of the matter is that we are really on a very slippery path. Why so? Because we are supposed to be a regional power, backstopping peace in the region. And therefore, we needed to have upped our game. But unfortunately, that's not what is happening. We are at war. Literally, metaphorically, at war with every of our neighbors. Not because of the fact that our neighbors don't like us, because they have no reason not to like us at all. Some of them are totally dependent on us to access the sea, like Uganda or South Sudan. But because our foreign policy seems to have basically lost its direction, I would say. We started off in 2013, the new year, with a very assertive, Afrocentric foreign policy. I think our foreign policy has lost color. You cannot, I'm trying to define it, and I've done that every decade, tried to define what our foreign policy is from the time of the rookies of the Kibaki to the assertive, Ruto, Uhuru policy, and now you don't know what to say. Now, at the same time, the region is on fire. Ethiopia had a deal of our port of Somalia. IGAD had tried to intervene and call a summit, and Djibouti thought that although it is a host of IGAD, it is not, it has what you can call conflict of interest, and therefore it does not want to host a meeting. And Museveni gratuitously, with all the elderliness of the man, you know, very, very stately, agrees to host the meeting. And Ethiopia declines. And that sounds the death knell for IGAD. And yet the Secretary General of IGAD is an Ethiopian. So the AU has stopped us just saying, we restore peace, we think about peace, all this kind of thing, respect sovereignty, but without an outright condemnation of a country's encroachment on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of another country. So, and Kenya is expected to be the guiding light of the region, and this is what we have. So those are the two dilemmas, that the region is sliding towards deeper and deeper instability and crisis, and at the same time the regional hegemon is caught up, one in its own hegemonic instability, because we still are talking about our future given the economy and so on, and in very bad relationship with the neighbor, perhaps the worst in decades.
Right, I think last week we saw also on the front page of a Citizen in Tanzania that it's high time they review their foreign policy. Do you think also that really calls for us to try and look deeply on our foreign policy? Is it now due time for revision of our foreign policy since we installed it? Dr. Ken, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Well, good to see you. Happy New Year, Dibal, and my colleagues. Ours is really a binary of a volatile region with a less stressed country and very ambitious president. Volatile region, I think Prof. Kawanja has indicated what is happening in different parts of the region. The conflicts between Kenya and Tanzania, Rwanda and DRC, Uganda and Rwanda, in ways that make us wonder whether the East African community is going to survive in a situation like this one. In the previous years, since its revival, I'm sure my friends will agree with me that the East African community has been largely a toothless bulldog. Now, with all this volatile region, is it going to survive? That's a $1 million question perhaps we will need to delve into. And my colleagues here who are the experts of international relations probably might help us to understand that. Back home is a restless country, very ambitious, His Excellency the President. But we have had a situation where politicians are exchanging barbs, the judiciary and the executive and the politicians coming in. We have had a situation fairly unstable in the education sector. Principals and headmasters being chased away from their stations of work. We have had the killings in what we call the Airbnb, which are very fascinating and likely to affect the industry that I've been part of in the past. And on the economic front, we have had a slight increase in the cost of electricity that cancels out the decrease of the price of petrol in the week. So it's a very interesting time that we are in, and we hope that as a region and as a country, we will sit back and relook at this to restore stability and optimism for our peoples.
Right, of course, so we will have an opportunity to discuss what is happening with the femicide since the beginning of this year, and this also is sending some chills down the spine of women in the country and their security, especially when it comes to Airbnb. But talking about, Ruto has responded and says, I am ready for talks with you. That is a statement by President William Ruto yesterday. If we may just roll a lot okay for us. Welcoming invitation by the Chief Justice Martha Koome for talks over alleged corruption in the judiciary. The president, who was speaking in Nandi County, said dialogue will help end impunity, corruption and vested interest. The statement is expected to signal a ceasefire in the war of words between the two organs of government. Elvis Koskei has more.
The head of state who spoke during the commissioning of Tinderet Integrated Technical and Trainers College in the county of Nandi said he was ready to spearhead talks to uproot the few corrupt individuals who he claimed have derailed the country's development agenda.
Hii ndio mwaka tutamalizana na ufisadi. This is the year. We are going to sort out corruption in Kenya. It doesn't matter. Na mimi nataka nimwambie Madam Chief Justice, mimi niko tayari. Mkutano kati ya executive, judiciary, legislature, our leadership, the leadership of the executive, mimi nikiongoza, the leadership of the judiciary, ikiongozwa na Chief Justice, the leadership of the legislature, ikiongozwa na speakers wetu.
Jana ametuambia ako na kesi 73 na karibu kesi 50 za majudges bado hawajamalizia, na ametuuliza tupeleke zingine. Tunataka tumuombe kwa heshima hizo 50 afanye haraka, amalizane na hao, alafu zingine tutaleta.
Mambo ya mahindi tulipata fertilizer ya kutosha, wale wakivaa masufuria, sisi tulienda mashambani na bei ukatupea mzuri ya 4,000. Mambo ya kahawa tunaona ni 80 shillings per kilo. Tunaona bei ya maziwa umestabilize, imekuja mpaka 50 shillings per liter.
The president said having engagements with the judiciary is a deliberate move to get rid of rogue judges.
I am ready for the conversation on how we are going to deal with vested interest, with incompetence, and with especially corruption, whether it is in judiciary, legislature, or in the executive, because it is delaying, it is derailing, and it is sabotaging the progress and the potential of Kenya. And therefore, I welcome the conversation between the executive, and I am going to lead from the front in that conversation.
Itakuwa sawa, itakuwa sawa. Na sisi pale tumemshikilia huyu rais. Na sisi kazi yetu ni kumsaidia. Yeye anatuongoza pale, anapanga, yetu ni kutekeleza yale anasema.
We have very few Kenya School of TVET. This is going to be one of them, and you'll have enough trainers in this Republic of Kenya. And this one is going to be a hub for the Western region. Even mambo ya jitume, tumeambiwa taleta computers hapa.
His statement came shortly after CJ Koome urged the leaders and members of the public to submit their complaints involving individual judges before the Judicial Service Commission.
Threats and declarations are extremely serious and a monumental assault to the Constitution. It is also an assault to the rule of law and the very stability of the nation, and can lead to chaos and anarchy.
But we will deal decisively and firmly with corruption in judiciary. Nobody should use the independence of the judiciary to manipulate and to hide corrupt officials. We have many people in the judiciary of great integrity.
The head of state was speaking when he commissioned projects at Tinderet, Kapsabet, Kaiboi and Kabiet areas. Elvis Koskei, KT News, Nandi County.
But in a quick rejoinder to Chief Justice Martha Koome's statement, as Mayor Leader Raila Odinga hit out at her invitation to the executive for talks to iron out differences between the two organs. Speaking during ODM's ongoing members registration exercise in Vihiga County, Raila said the planned meeting was tantamount to ceding the independence of the judiciary. As Alon Chanda reports, Raila and his allies sustained criticism against Kenya Kwanza government over the high cost of living.
The ODM party, in a rush to broaden its base, has taken members' recruitment initiative to Vihiga County, camping in Mbale and Emuhaya areas. The party boss, Raila Odinga, while leading the exercise, hit out at the Chief Justice Martha Koome over her proposal to hold a meeting with the executive to iron out their differences. Odinga also calling on President William Ruto to obey the courts. According to Raila, the planned meeting will amount to ceding the independence of the judiciary.
Please, Madam Martha Koome, don't compromise the independence of the judiciary by going to bed with the executive. There's nothing to be discussed between you and the executive. Just give an order that the judicial rulings must be respected by everybody, including the President of Kenya. This is what you say. If there's supposed to be any meeting, then it must be a very comprehensive meeting where all the stakeholders in the country are involved. And I just want to give Mr. Ruto free advice. Please respect the judiciary. If you don't respect the judiciary, you will not respect whatever you say.
President William Ruto triggered the storm on alleged corruption in the judiciary and taken up by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. Gachagua has announced he will personally take a petition to the Judicial Service Commission to oust Lady Justice Esther Maina over alleged abuse of office. Chief Justice Martha Koome on Monday expressed her dismay with the new twist, and according to her, a meeting will iron out the issues.
Parliament has become rogue. Parliament has become an appendage of the executive. We would not want to see judiciary also becoming an appendage of the executive.
Sisi tunaambia Martha Koome, wewe ulipatiwa katiba, linda hiyo katiba. Kama Ruto anasema haheshimu mahakama, hata wewe usimheshimu. Funga mahakama, mawakili wa serikali wasikuje kuwakilisha kesi pale. Funga mahakama, lakini mambo ya kutuambia mnaenda kuzungumza, hiyo ni kuenda kuleta ukora na hatuwezi kubali kama wananchi wa Kenya.
The leaders further sustaining their onslaught against the government over the high cost of living.
Maslahi ya mahasla imeangaliwa. Mambo ya mahasla imegeuka ikawa mateso bila chuki. Si namna hiyo? Kwa hivyo wangapi wanasema ya kwamba Ruto aende?
Na waomba wale ambao wajajisajili kwa ODM, muingie ODM. Wale wengine ambao wanatembea hapa kando kando ati UDA ndio wameongeza kodi.
The party is preparing to hold its internal elections in April and is keen to broaden its base, recruiting and registering members while warding off attempts by other parties to infiltrate its perceived strongholds.
Tunataka chama chetu cha ODM kiwe na nguvu kabisa. Saa hii tuko na wabunge 85 katika bunge kule Nairobi na Senate pamoja. Tunataka tuwe na wabunge zaidi ya 150 tukifika bunge la 2027. Tunataka vijana waingie ndani ya chama. Vijana ndio nguzo ya chama. Wamama nataka waingie ndani kwa chama kwa fujo. Wamama ndio maua ya chama.
Alano Chanda, KTN News.
Staying with that story, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka has warned Chief Justice Martha Koome against seeking audience with the president over the matter. Kalonzo warns that meeting President Ruto was a trap for Koome, as it was disguised as a dialogue. The Wiper Democratic Party leader, who was speaking after chairing the party's National Executive Committee meeting in Nairobi, also called out Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua for publicly calling out a judicial officer in an escalation of war of words between the executive and the judiciary. Kalonzo has termed Gachagua's statement on the judiciary as absurd and unethical.
Hey. Well, you almost gave a shock. Nothing to negotiate. Absolutely. And I would be very disappointed if Chief Justice Kome was to fall for that obvious trick and fall into a trap. We are witnessing very absurd situations. And we must actually say enough is enough. Please leave the judiciary alone. And I'm waiting to see whether Chief Justice will receive Gachagua. When is Thursday? He said he's going to lead a protest. I want to see that, because that will be the culmination of absurdity. And he named a judge, completely unethical. That's what I call that conduct absurd to the extreme. It doesn't happen anywhere.
All right, we just want to slice and dice that particular issue with the latest development so far, calling for negotiation. Should they go full steam ahead with it or not? That is a question that is hanging on the rafters of many Kenyans as well, just as we've heard also from some of the leaders and legislators as well. And this is what has been actually drawn today by Ozone inside the Star. As you can see it there, we have Chief Justice and the Constitution. She's tucked away inside the Constitution. If Professor Peter Kagwanja can look at that as well, and our guests can actually contribute to this and weigh in on this particular latest developments. So they're caught up in that particular sharpest age of a horn of a dilemma. Should they negotiate or not? Peter Kagwanja. And you can start by deciphering that particular editorial cartoon.
I would take, an exceptional position from this debate, and I think this is really a classic dialogue of the deaf.
Dialogue of the deaf.
Yes, this is a dialogue of the deaf, because our constitution is based on the principle of separation of power, as defined by Baron Montesquieu, the philosopher. Yes. But that does not mean that the three arms of government operate in silo. Mm-hmm. It's a clear division of labor in government, where the executive, implements policies, makes and implements policies, that those policies and laws are defined by parliament, and the judiciary arbitrate between, in any of the dispute arising from these policies and these laws. And what we have seen is a very robust judiciary, addressing this, and literally, asserting itself in a way we have not seen in the past. Some of us have been very critical of that. We used to call it, or we've been calling it, judicial activism. But looking at it deeply, without judicial kind of, activism, what we are calling activism, then we can easily hurtle back into what we used to call dictatorship. So I think it's important to have dialogue between judiciary and the legislature on issues that they think can be ironed out. It is important for judiciary to talk to the executive, just like it is important for the executive to talk to the legislature. We are not talking about the republics of executive, the republics of Kome, and the republic of Wetangula. No, this is not what we are talking about. But at the same time, the discussions, and I think this is really the point being made by the politicians, particularly from the opposition, that whatever dialogue will take place within this must not lead to the subordination of each of the bodies by the other. We don't want in this country parliamentary tyranny. We don't want in this country judicial tyranny. We don't want in this country executive tyranny. We've had enough of it for decades. So what we want is a democracy. And democracy is about dialogue. Democracy is about proaction in terms of dealing with things. And each of the arms will be judged in terms of its own achievement. Now, judiciary will have to deal firmly with the corruption when it is brought before it. The executive has the prerogative not to talk, but to present cases. For example, if you say the judiciary is corrupt, that is rhetoric.
Just get the individual and let them face the law. And now accuse the judiciary of setting them free when you have evidence. Bring enough evidence. So that is how the wheels of democracy rotates. They rotate on basis of facts, not fiction. They rotate on the basis of mutual respect, and they rotate on the basis of dialogue within the three arms of the government. So both the opposition in this particular case and the government on this, and the government are on the wrong. I think Mother Koome here is right. Dialogue. If the executive is saying that the judiciary is corrupt, judiciary is saying send your grievances or your complaints to Judicial Service Commission, because it's a procedure. This country has we don't have to make more procedures. We did that and finished that deal between 2008 and 2010. And we got a new constitution. We can only improve on it. So for the executive to talk too much, throwing words mad here at the people, judiciary is dirty, and it is the one that presided of the case that ensured that Ruto is in power. And it is true, again, I was remembering my debate with my friend, Makamo Tua, on the judiciary, when he said that, the judiciary is gone. And we said, no, just because the judiciary has not
ruled in your favor.
It ruled in your favor does not mean that it is bad. Today, they are praising it. So I think we need to play the rule by the book, not basically, saying things are good when they favor you and they are bad when they don't favor you. Let's be people of justice. Remember, justice is the first word in our national anthem. After praying to God, the next thing we say is, justice be our shield and defender. And justice means that being fair even to the Constitution. Don't try to distort it, because every Kenyan has a copy. So when you go into the platform and take a microphone and start saying things that look weird, you look like you are speaking from us. We read this Constitution. The judiciary is right.
The judiciary is right, but they say this is a booby trap. That once you actually get into that booby trap, you will lose your independence. They think that Mother Koome should not take this particular handy opportunity by extended by, or asking for these negotiations with the president, because they will be stifled, so to speak, of which I don't know.
Well, I think Dipal somehow agree with what Professor Kawanja is saying, but I will quickly hasten to add that there are certain things we are going to lose if we looked at this situation from a moral point of view of right and wrong. The history of our judiciary is very well known. There's no doubt about that, Dima. The nature of corruption in our judiciary did not start with Ruto, the president, nor did it start with Koome. As a country, particularly in Kenya's post-colony, we have grappled with the issues of a fairly corrupt judiciary. Look at the different commissions that we have had to do what we loosely refer to the country as the patch of the judiciary. You remember the committee led by Justice Ringera and what it did. You remember much more recently the committee led by the former public prosecutor Sharon Rao and what it did. So at least for once, give it to the president, he's not saying anything new when he talks about corruption in the judiciary. And having been in the Kenyan politics for a while, then he understands what he is saying. Probably what one can find a challenge with is the way he is doing it. But at least give it to him. He has a point when he talks about corruption in our judiciary. And that's not something that we will need to run away with.
But the proper channels...
The levels of acrimony and political expedience with which this is being done is what one will have a challenge with. The second question here, you asked whether they should negotiate or not. Really, Dibal, it depends on where you are looking at it from. For me, the answer is yes and no. Let me begin with the no. The worry that Kenyans have is whether or not Chief Justice Koome has the uncompromising stance of the retired Chief Justice Maraga to stand before pressure from the executive. That's something subject to debate. The issue is whether he has the activism and the wits of the former Chief Justice William Tunga to stand the pressure from the executive. But if you look at the way she has operated, perhaps the answer is no. If you look at it that way, then you will not be for the dialogue, case in point because the executive will have a better part of our CJ. Yes, and the professor has highlighted this, in the situations of politics of acrimony, situations of mutual hostility that we are seeing between the two important institutions in the country. Granted, we are Africans, dialogue is a solution to many things, if you looked at it that way. But also, if I'm not wrong on this, a characteristic of our politics, we have started the campaigns of 2027, if you're not seeing it. And I can see all that is happening in that context. When you look at the opposition is campaigning. You know, ODM is going around registering members and reorganizing its internal mechanisms. On the other side, the ruling party, they are realigning and aligning themselves in ways that bespeaks of how the expectations they have of how things will turn out in 2027. The mountain region, the deputy president is facing challenges that every deputy president has faced in the country. So what one will see is our old bad habits of campaigning all the time. It's only a year that we had a general election. We needed to settle down and do a bit of developing the country before we start all over again. But we have started too early. How far we will go and who will suffer, your guess is as good as mine. The wretched of the earth, the masses, will actually suffer, if you permit me to use that old phrase of Frantz Fanon. It's a book I was reading this morning. Yes.
All right. We want to take a short break, but also when we circle back, we want to at least look in what is happening as to, you know, our female in this country. We've had two macabre killings so far, and one a very gory one, disturbing, very morbid, where we had a female student being dismembered, her head also being decapitated. And so far we have 3 suspects who have been arrested in connection with the gruesome murder of a 20-year-old girl in Roysambu over the weekend. One of the suspects was arrested at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi. The suspects are being, of course, processed for forensic examination. And we'll just run you by that particular story on the other side of a break. But we need to look keenly on this because we have a Federation of Women Lawyers also speaking about this femicide that is happening in the country. This seems to be a ritualistic killing. And is there a network that is working around the clock to make sure that it's happening and targeting women here in the country? Or is it here just in Kenya or elsewhere? Maybe we'll also get more information as it comes to hand. We'll take a short break right now.